Hi, today we're talking about spiritual cults. Have you ever been in one? Have you maybe been in a group where it felt like a cult? I have. And I'm not here to name names, but I am here to talk about discernment and why discernment is so key, along with the damage that these cults cause. Of course, they don't call themselves cults. They see themselves as providing a service or providing community where like-minded people can gather and hang out and discuss things and learn. But my experience was a great lesson in discernment. When I first found this group, I thought it was awesome. They were talking the language that I was craving, the spiritual type language that I really resonated with, that felt natural to me, but I couldn't find anywhere else. And so it was very easy to go all in, like, these are my people, this is my tribe. And it was interesting for a while. I mean, the person who was the leader of this group came off as knowledgeable. She had sort of, she could be sort of disarming in a way that presented itself as she had information we didn't, but she was going to share it with us. So I spent some time in this place. There were red flags. I wouldn't say that they were right away, but pretty quickly, but I kept discounting them. And that's the part that I want to talk about today. Why do we do that? Why do we discount all of those red flags that come up? Whether we're talking about spiritual cults, whether we're talking about a relationship, whether we're talking about anything that's going on in your life. Why do we discount that? In my case, being in this group and addressing the red flags would mean that this awesome place that I found to hang out with other like-minded people, it meant I would have to give that up. And I didn't want to do that. I liked being able to talk about these far out concepts. They weren't far out to me. They were part of the natural evolution of spiritual evolvement, spiritual growth. So I was willing to overlook them. This also played into my self-doubt. Even though I was getting information, the flag would go off and I would go, this doesn't sound right. I took that information in and made it about me being wrong. This person was a classic narcissist. She took gaslighting before gaslighting was even a term. She took it through the roof. There's this thing that happens in these situations where it makes it, and let me be clear, these situations are when people who have their own healing still to do, that haven't healed, and then tend to project out onto others, right? So self-doubt was a thing that, it was kind of a big thing for me, and it feels like it was one of the last pieces of old stuff that I was working through. And she lit it up on all channels. And I kept discounting what I was feeling, what I knew to be true, thinking that I must have it wrong, that she obviously knows better. She came across as confident, self-assured, and she rattled this stuff off in such a way that she was believable. I now understand that it's easy to take a little bit of information, a little bit of truth, and then spin it in a way to fit your particular perspective and pass that off as the whole truth. This is where discernment comes in. But if you're like me, discernment is something that people at the time, they talked about, but I didn't really put into practice for lots of different reasons. Like I said, I didn't want to leave this group. Then I would be all alone. And my spiritual awakening happening almost 30 years ago now, it's been a lonely ride. It's been a lot of isolation. It's been a lot of finding my own way that is different from everybody else's. So I thought I had found this great community, and I was unwilling to disengage from it. So there were some signs that, like I said, kind of from the beginning, but they grew. I remember one time we would have we would get on Zoom calls, and she would put them under intuition exercises, like guess what color crystal I'm holding, or guess where I put this crystal in my house. So she had us close his eyes, and she wanted us to tell her what collective she was connected with or she had just been talking to. So I closed my eyes. I got a visual right away. It was a female dressed in this soft yellow, like chiffon type thing. And it was clear as day. What she said was it was a male, part of the Essassani, and that's not what I got. Now, I don't know why she would be lying. Like why would she lie? That doesn't make sense. And it's also possible that she was connected to lots of different collectives, right? And I picked up on a different one. Those are possible scenarios, but I didn't see it that way at the time. I thought, because she was adamant, this was the only one. And what made the gaslighting worse was that she said, if you didn't get this, you're wrong. You're wrong. Your intuitive skills are crap, and you need to basically go back to the drawing board. So this was the kind of energy she was projecting outward, and it wasn't, and she went on to describe details that did not match what I had picked up at all, like night and day. So I made that wrong. I made me be the wrong guy, but be in the wrong in that position. But there was a thing that went, okay, so we're going to just take note of that. They were starting to pile up. Eventually, I parted ways with this group. I was probably with them for a year and a half. And it got to the point where she was very divisive. She was publicly shame people that disagreed with her. She would gaslight you if you didn't get in line. So it was a great, great exercise for me in learning my own truth, in learning to, not only was I getting the information, but then honoring that information. And what I learned in that situation, based on what I saw her doing to other people, is you couldn't, if I were to speak up against that, it would not be received. It would not be received at all. In fact, there would probably cause some backlash. So I didn't do any of that publicly. I just started getting closer and closer to the understanding that it was time for me to leave. What I gained from this experience was like boot camp for discernment. It put everything in a spotlight, kind of this compression chamber, this pressure situation where it just kept hitting me from all different sides. I was taking courses from her, involved in a lot of things that she offered. So there was lots of opportunities for it to continue, for me to be bombarded by these things that didn't align with me. I want to be clear that I'm not saying she was wrong per se. I'm talking about the alignment that I didn't feel with that and how I ignored that alignment, how I discounted all of my own intuitive hits because it was easier to let the self-doubt run the show until it wasn't. And then that's when I began the process of unwinding myself from that group. So discernment is, there's lots of times we sense something, feel something, know something, hear something, and it goes against the grain, or it goes against popular opinion, or it goes against what our family and friends think, and then we don't act on it. That is the biggest disservice that we do. I'm not saying you have to act on it in a big way, but I'm saying when you discount it, when you discard it, when you make yourself wrong, that is a huge disservice and a dishonoring that we do to ourselves when that happens. It takes courage to be able to listen to ourselves when we know we're right, and it doesn't have to be, like I said, it doesn't have to be loud way. It can just be this quiet honoring. And I didn't make a big deal out of this when I left that group. I had taken some classes from her. I'd gotten a certification from her. She wanted me to continue on. I just said, no, it's not, this doesn't feel aligned for me anymore. And that was the it. Now, she didn't treat everybody that way. I know that there were some cases where people spoke up and, like I said, the backlash was fast and furious. I didn't speak up. Not at that time. I was honoring myself in a different way by just extricating myself from the situation. And that was the best possible scenario for me. I had gotten what I needed from that lesson, from being in that environment. It had highlighted to me in ways that I couldn't highlight I couldn't have gotten it any other way. It was like boot camp for this. When I first joined that, I was really questioning my ability to connect with my guides. I could not do it. I was questioning my intuitive abilities in general. And it was clear pretty early on that if we didn't see things the way that she said that they were, then we were wrong. That was a really hard pill for me to swallow. I get my intuitive information 3 ways. I see it, I feel it, and I know it. And I was struggling to own that. So the gift from this situation for me was I now fully own that. I fully understand that I have been connected with my guides for a very, very long time. It was my voice. I thought it was my voice I was hearing instead of them. But being in that situation where I had to test my discernment, where I had to, like an exercise, stretch it and move it and utilize it and strengthen it, allowed me to fully embrace who I am, who I know myself to be, my abilities, my capabilities, and all of that. Because she sort of highlighted that last big piece of old stuff that I was still carrying. So for that, I'm grateful. I couldn't have gotten it that quick any other way. I mean, like I said, it was about 1.5 years, and I was ready to move on. But the key is, do you have the courage to honor your discernment? Do you have the courage to go against the grain? Do you have the courage to listen to what's coming up for you internally, even if it's totally different from what anybody else says? That's where the real power lies. So let me know if you have any questions. Let me know how the process of discernment is going for you. I'd love to hear from you.